Alright, so today we're going to be installing differential and transmission breather kits for the Patrol. So we're heading to Big Bear in just over a month, and might be some water crossings to do this time around. So it's going to be good to keep anything from getting into the axles. It's a simple kit. Got it off of eBay. Consists of block, which as you can see is clearly labeled, a bunch of tubing, and then your fittings right here. The plan is to install it over here on the passenger side of the engine bay and get everything run to it. So see how it goes. So here's the engine bay of our 88 Patrol. You can see it's a carbureted model. Fuel injection is going to come a little bit later, but right now we're focusing on the breather kit. So this is the area where I'm thinking I'm going to try to get it mounted. Nothing really important over there. We got a little bit of rust coming through, but it's just superficial, not a big deal. And it gives us plenty of room to run it down. And under there, we have the first axle breather right there, as you can see. We get the same thing on the back side. Right over there. And then we have the transmission and the transfer case. So I'm going to get routing the hoses first. We'll go from there. Okay, so I have the first line run from the rear axle. Kind of hard to see it in there, but there is the new line connected to the breather. I've still got to put a clamp on that. And then I have run it along the same route as our extended rear brake line. And then it is coming up and running along the entirety of the brake lines and fuel lines up into the engine bay. And I brought it up along here where it is continued to be zip tied to the brake lines all the way up to where the eventual plan to mount the block is. I left the whole thing here so that way I had as much as I need. That's the longest run, so the rest of it should be pretty easy. Alright, that's that part. Okay, so the block is now installed. A couple of self-tapping screws right through the sheet metal there. It is nice and secure. Next thing is going to be to run everything up into there. Alright, so this is the front breather right here. And it goes right to there. It's actually got a decent amount of slack for stock. But when we start really flexing the front end, that's actually the point that we bind now. The shocks and the brake line and the suspension as a whole still has enough travel to continue, but this actually starts to stretch and bind on us now. The rear is even worse. The rear consisted of this piece, which was attached to that nipple up there on that crossbar on the frame itself, whereas I guess it's where it gets its ventilation from. Anyhow, so that one's been eliminated as well. Okay, so the kit doesn't, at least my kit didn't come with any instructions, and it's not really that necessary for the most part, but at the same time it didn't come with an explanation of the parts that come in there. So when I ran the rear one, I simply detached the old breather hose and slid on the new one onto the existing nipple fitting that's on the axle housing itself. Come to find out, as I'm looking through everything, it actually comes with new compression style fittings to replace the stock ones that are your standard nipple style where the fitting just slides right on. This one right here. I found this on the front one as I was doing it. I had a better access to it and better view and noticed, how about that? So that is the old one. This new one allows it to actually slip inside, and as you can see, I already have that one fitted to the front axle, so it actually works just just like that. I'm going to pop it into there and then route it along the same line that the old line came from. Alright, so here we are. I have routed the front line in the same basic path as the original, using the original clamps as well. I'm going to have some more slack that we're going to try to leave over there, but it is using the fancy new compression fitting with the clamps. Then the hard line that was running alongside the engine bay here actually connects from this end, which goes to the front axle, to this end, which goes back to the transmission, and then it tees and goes up to a unified breather right in there in the side of the wall here. So what I'm going to do is I'm running this one from the front axle all the way up and dedicated, and then for the moment I'm going to tie into that nipple down there, which is the hard line from the transmission / transfer case. I'll check all that out after I get this hooked up. Alright, so normally when I make a mistake I just wouldn't show you that part of it, but I think it's actually important to do in this situation. So my concern, as I mentioned in that last clip, was the binding that we had off of the breather line, the original breather line I should say, and then I was running it along the same path thinking that we just leave extra slack. But then it dawned on me that there's no reason to do that. So instead I have flipped it around, and it is now running along the same course as the front brake line. So I have it zip tied to the brake line all the way with a little bit of extra slack up where it actually meets the body. And then it comes up and meets and runs the exact same route as the one that came from the rear over to the block. So that is the best idea to avoid any kind of binding. You have plenty of line that comes in most of these kits. Go that route, and that way you have one thing to worry about, which is the brake line, and if that's already stretching, then you got bigger problems on your breather. Alright, so the kit comes with filters and then the compression fittings that go into the block. So right here, got them installed, obviously F for front, R for rear. This one right here is going to the front, and it just pops right in, slips in, and that's all there is to it. That's the one there. I'm going to get the rear one set next up into here, and then I'll take care of the gearbox. And so here it is, the finished product. As you can see, you got the front and rear axles, and then I'm just using the one that says gearbox because, again, underneath the GQ Patrol there's a hard line that actually tees off further down to split to both the gearbox and the transfer case, and it's actually a pretty good design from the factory as far as most of it's concerned. It's hard lines all the way back until it reaches the gearbox cross member, and then it goes a small jumper of rubber, then it goes hard line until it actually splits, and it's actually pretty well insulated from the heat and so on. So I didn't feel a need to run these all the way back. I have a small hardline adapter right there, which is then going to more of the neoprene hose up to this. So we're going to run with this for the time being and see how it goes. But we are more or less set for water crossings now. Alright. So we're just messing around now, but she gets pretty good flex for a truck that still uses a daily driver. She would actually go a whole lot further if we released the sway bar. But anyhow, not too shabby. Not too shabby at all.